All right, I'm recording. So my guest today is Samuel Middlebrook. Samuel Middlebrook of Redhawk Firearm Training. And the thing that I find uh, most interesting about Sam is the way that he is able to. He's not just able to coach you on your shooting technique. He's able to coach you on your internal processes, your internal monologue, and mindfulness attached to your shooting as well as your dry practice. Sam, thanks so much for coming on.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm excited to talk about dry fire. I'm excited to talk about instruction. Here's the thing, just because you brought it up, so I'm just going to start talking for just a second.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Most people dry fire trying to figure out problems with their gun or problems with their gear. I think dry fire reveals all the problems with this guy right here. And that's why I do it. And so I think if we're going to talk about improving and we're going to talk about dry fire and we're going to talk about getting better at this whole thing, we've got to deal with the biggest issue, which is my head, my heart, my hands, and my eyes, in that order. And I can coach people on shooting technique and give them shooting tips all day long that they may or may not know what to do with. And so if I don't help them with a mental process that helps them deal with how they're going to process how they're going to do this, how they process when they're going to do this, how to process what kind of story they tell themselves as they do this, then we can do everything quote unquote right as we practice and still never improve because we're not dealing with us along the way. So this may be a very different conversation than you expected, Memphis, because we're going to talk about head, heart, hands, and eyes. And the reason why I say this might be different than you expected is because this is different than just about everybody expects. When they come to one of my classes or click on a YouTube video, they get something different than they expected because I'm not trying to just list a set of instructions. What I'm trying to do is help people. So I'm glad you wanted to have this conversation. I'm excited to have it with you.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Yeah, I am so here for it. I'm so absolutely here for it. So let's
Awesome.
just go ahead and hop right in. Yes, Lee. So your training company, Red Hawk Firearm Training, you also host a series of YouTube videos that also feature on Facebook, and you call it the Dry Fire Journal. And one thing that keyed me onto that was just the you don't. It's not just focus on the sights and concentrate on your trigger press. It's more about focusing on mindfulness. Like you're telling people not just where their eyes should be focused, but where their mind should be focused. And can you just give me a little bit of piece of that? Like, can you talk deeper about that?
Sure. Many years ago, I was a musician for a living, and one of the people that taught me a significant amount of stuff that helped me in my musical path told me that the problem isn't in my guitar, the problem is in me. And if I start with my hands and what my fingers are doing on that guitar or piano or drums or whatever I was doing that day, if I focus too much on the doing, then I'm not concerned with who I am being and I'm not concerned with who I am becoming. And that thought has translated with me into most of the aspects of my life and has translated into me as a firearm user and has translated into me as a firearm instructor. I want to help people figure out who it is that they are being when they are shooting. And I want to help them attach a goal to who they are becoming. And the Dry Fire Journal that you mentioned is a daily YouTube thing. It is an audacious undertaking to produce. Well, first a daily video, but a daily dry fire video, and a daily dry fire video that helps me get better and helps you get better if you're willing to jump into it. But if we just make it about the shooting, we're not going to get as far as fast. If we make it about the shooting and work in what are we mentally processing, what are we experiencing as we are doing this process, who are we trying to be and who are we trying to become, man, now we're getting somewhere. And so that's kind of the genesis of that approach for me.
Wow. Who we are being and who we are becoming.
Yeah.
That is deep. So,
Well, think about it this way, Memphis. Who I am becoming is usually predicted by who I'm being right now. And who I'm being, if I continue to be it, that predicts who I'm going to become. So I've got to think as I am even just dry firing, who am I being right now? Am I being the kind of person that is putting in the work necessary in order to improve? Or am I being the person that's only going to do the kind of dry fire that I enjoy and think is fun? Am I going to be the kind of person that gets better and works toward a goal? Or am I going to be the kind of person that only does one drill that I know that I can do well so that I can feel like I'm doing better than I actually am? And so I have this self-based confirmation bias that says that I am good at this because I only do this one thing and I do it really well. And I'm just going to pick some topics out of the air. Let's say that my draw to first shot dry is super fast and very accurate, and I've proven it with shot calling, and I've proven it with something like wrong shoulder. This is weird. I'm backwards. Laser Academy over my shoulder. But I've determined that in dry fire, and I have reached my goal. And let's say that my goal is a 1.1 second draw to first shot. And I get to that goal, and I'm able to do that over and over and over and over and over again. Now, I think, you know what? I might want to dry fire transitions and hang two targets and have to go left, right, or whatever combination. Here comes the struggle bus to pick you up. You ready for it? The struggle bus is going to pick you up because here's the struggle. Oh, wait. I want to work on this transition thing, but I'm not that great at it. And my internal story about myself is going to not work if I try a new thing that I'm not good at, if my story is I'm only going to dry fire that which I'm already good at. And so what I'm picking at here, Memphis, and you know this because I know you, and by the way, I love you, but I know you, and I know that you know this because we've had this conversation. But for anybody watching this that's wanting to attain a skill, it doesn't matter if it's shooting related or in your career or in your relationships, this is the core of part of our collective big issue as human beings. What I'm describing for you is some of the detail and some of the ugly nitty gritty parts that we don't like to talk about when we describe our comfort zone. I'm talking about the comfort zone of a shooter. This is the warm, cuddly blanket that we don't like to unravel because it gets chilly and it's not as comfortable and cool. And so if I simply got out there and said, both in my classes and in this YouTube video and in other areas where I teach, if I got out there and simply put a recipe of, hey, if you will follow, these 12 easy steps, if you will just do this 2 minutes a day, if you will just put in 10 reps every day or something like that, man, there's a chance I could make some really good money off that. Let's be honest. Because people like following steps because then we can complete them and check them off. I wouldn't do anybody any favors that way, though. I wouldn't be helping anybody. If we don't deal with the head and the heart, then what we're doing with our hands and our eyes is not going to progress the way we want it to. Because how we deal with our head and our heart over time, if that doesn't improve, then what we do with our hands and what we see with our eyes won't improve very much either.
That is gold, man. Dude, this is good stuff. let's see. I have a couple questions, if you don't mind.
Bring them on. Bring them on.
Yeah. So I think that let's see. So when we're dry practicing, I think a lot of folks, what ends up happening is they're focusing on their sights, or they're focusing on their grip. Um, Not to get too deep into the weeds, not to give away like the secret sauce, but in
I
general.
don't have any, so it's okay.
But yeah, in general, like where should folks be oriented? Like like a lot of folks, I think there's some mistakes that are made when we try to count our reps, or if we have a predetermined time frame, or if we're so focused on the outcome more than just living in the process. Can you talk a little bit more about where folks should be oriented specifically?
Sure. We tend to follow what our goals are. And so, really, what I'm after here is to help people choose different goals. In fact, I've got a whole online seminar coming up about this, and we're going to talk about goals. And I know that for me, I've had to redefine how I shape goals. And for a long time, when I would dry practice or dry fire, I would say I'm only going. To, I'm not. I wouldn't say only. I would say I'm going to dry fire for 5 minutes a day, every day this week. And that's a great goal if I'm just getting started. I'm not knocking that goal at all. But where this becomes a problem is when we say, I'm only going to dry fire for 5 minutes a day. And the goal shifts. Did you hear the difference in the tone there? Not I'm going to dry fire for 5 minutes every day this week. Next week, it might become I'm only going to dry fire for 5 minutes this week a day. And so what happens is we clear the gun, we put in our barrel block. By the way, Memphis has a great barrel block discount code for you. But I put in my barrel block and I start my stopwatch or set my timer on my phone, and I do whatever it is I'm going to do. And 5 minutes later, once that alarm goes off, beep, 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 I'm done. And my goal became time instead of a process. My goal became I'm going to do a thing for 5 minutes instead of I'm going to do a thing in such a way that I improve or find out how I can improve. Or I'm going to do a thing and set myself some goals. I'm going to draw the first shot and I'm going to present my front sight or present my dot right to the center of this target every time, regardless of how slow or fast I go. And I'm going to make that my goal, and I'm going to try to get that 8 out of 10 times. And if that's a spicy goal for you, first of all, awesome. I'm glad you're watching this, and I'm really excited for you because you're walking down a cool journey. But if that's your goal, then I think you have something better, something that's going to help you accomplish something more than just time on a clock or number of reps. I'm gonna draw from the holster 10 times today before I leave my house, and we'll call that dry practice. Here's the problem. By the time you get to number 7, you're thinking, wait, is this 7 or 8? Oh, cool, I've only got 2 more to go. And now you're thinking about your goal instead of thinking about shooting. And I want us, when we dry practice, to think about our shooting or think about our approach to shooting. It really boils down to those two things. And so I think how we set our goals is sometimes a defining moment for how our dry fire practice is going to go. And sorry if I took a hard left turn there, but
No,
there
no.
we go.
I'm so good with, like taking hard left turns like that.
Okay,
So,
cool.
man, good stuff. Good stuff. So, the challenge that I have is okay, I have like, I'm dressed, getting ready to go, getting ready to leave the house. The thing is, I live in Memphis, Tennessee. Let's just be real here. I might have to use this thing today. So, what is some guidance that you can provide if I have a limited time allotment, like I'm about to leave the house for the day?
Yeah. First of all, I'm with you. I live in Yakima, Washington, and if we talk per capita, I'm about as spicy as you are. Um, if I have a limited amount of time, then I have to choose what my priorities are. And I'm going to dive into this just for a minute, Memphis, and I hope that's okay.
Yeah, please.
If that's you, you've got a limited amount of time, and you understand, man, I might have to use this thing today. Well, let's think through. Are you sitting at an office desk? Are you driving a truck? Or are you working construction? Are you, what are you doing all day? Are you standing or are you sitting the majority of the time? Then let's work on that. If you are going to be driving a truck literally all day, well, then have you practiced dry firing while sitting down? Have you cleared your gun, put in your barrel block, and put that in your holster and reconfirmed that you're barrel blocked, and then gotten in your rolling office and buckled your seatbelt? And have you thought about, man, how am I going to get my gun out from here or wherever it is on your body? What is the seatbelt like on your work vehicle compared to your personal vehicle? And have you figured that out? If I work in an office, have I thought through how and where I carry my firearm? If your workplace and your contract demand it, and you have to carry off body in a workplace, which is never optimal, but sometimes that's your only choice, and I get that, I really do. Have you thought about practicing getting the gun out from that off body carry? Have you thought through your workplace environment? Have you thought through places where you go to routinely, your fuel station, restaurant, coffee shop, place of worship, wherever it is that you're going today? Have you thought through those places? If I have a limited amount of time, then I want to work on the thing that I might need the most. So, what do I need the most? Well, if I'm feeling unsafe, or I've been harassed, or I've been assaulted, and I'm predicting that I might be, then I'm going to need to practice that which I feel like I'm going to need the most. So, get on your gun. I tell people all the time, get on your gun. And here's what I mean by that. I don't want you to get to your gun. I don't want you to only practice just defeat and concealment. I want you to get on your gun. I think that sometimes 10 to 20 repetitions, and by the way, I totally sense the irony right now for those of you that are catching it. I just talked about not setting goals like this, but for a compressed amount of time, setting a goal like this is okay. Sometimes just 10 to 20 repetitions in the shirt that I'm wearing today, with the pants that I'm wearing today, with the belt that I'm choosing, and the holster and the gun, to defeat my concealment and get my grip on my gun and do that 10, 20 times is a great thing. And you can do that literally in like 30 to 40 seconds. It doesn't take a ton of time. Next, assuming the gun is clear and you've got a barrel block in, I would remove the gun from the holster. Notice that I didn't say draw. I would remove the gun from the holster and just think, how do I want to grip this gun? And that's a very personal question, because you're the only person on the planet with the combination of your hand size and that firearm. So how do I want to grip this gun? And I would just form my grip and keep forming my grip and keep forming my grip and make sure that I am gripping the gun exactly the way I want to, and take that grip and build it up in my eyesight. And release, take that grip, build it up in my eyesight. That is something that I do constantly. And it's something that I believe even people that dry fire regularly don't do enough whenever they have a wardrobe change. And so I may dry fire in the like polo and 511 pants that I tend to wear all the time, because this is what I do for a living. And I get to choose my outfit. Some people don't have that luxury. So have you dry fired in your work uniform? Or have you dry fired in your Sunday best if you go to a place of worship? Or there's a whole lot of things here that people don't think about that don't take a lot of time. And so I'm describing to you a starting point. I'm also describing to you a refresher point for those of you that are very familiar with this and feel like you've got your stuff all together. This is helpful for really anybody.
This is incredibly helpful. I think we're going to help a lot of folks with this. Yeah, and not just that, but I'm getting a ton of notes from this stuff as well.
Wow. Okay.
So
Awesome.
let's see. So one major obstacle for a lot of folks, and um, I think a big obstacle for a lot of folks is space. Like, I'm basically like my dry practice dojo is really just kind of like a 10 by 10 spare bedroom, like it's the office here.
Mhm.
But I have granted assistance to like other folks that have some serious like constraints. I'm talking like all they have is like a closet, or all
Mhm.
they have is, uh the the cab in the back of the big rig, or all they have is,
Yeah.
just, and a lot of that is just for safety concerns, like there's, when we think about the direction of least consequence, that may be their only direction of least consequence because they live in an apartment.
Right.
So what kind of guidance can you provide if I'm not like going too deep into things like
No,
this
no,
is
no. This is just fine. So we live in an amazing age where I can go to Mantis, for example. There are other examples out there, but I can go to a company like Mantis and go to the Mantis website and download targets like this that that I can print off and hang on my wall. Now, here's what's even cooler for somebody that only has a closet, that only has the cab of their commercial truck. Because we live in 2023 or whenever it is you're watching this, you can on your phone print this out and reduce the size of these notebook size targets to like 30%, 40%, 50%. Make it smaller so that you get to practice to scale what it might look like to run a 10-yard shot. In fact, I will do this. I'm going to send when we're done recording. I'm going to send Memphis a link to this really cool website that's from I believe a Canadian uh, competitive shooting society. And what they do is they have this really cool thing that helps you figure out I'm standing at this distance and I want this target to simulate a 20-yard shot. They tell you what by what percentage to shrink out your target to. And I will make sure that Memphis has this in the show notes and can put this in wherever. But for those of you that have a confined space, and I'm sorry it took me so long to spit that out. Uh, there is a lot of options for you, including reducing the size of your targets. You hang those up, you can put multiples of them up and practice transitions. You don't need a ton of space when you're not shooting any rounds. What you do need is the ability to tell myself I am going to work with what I have and no longer make any excuses. I am going to work with what I have. And not only am I going to work with what I have, I'm going to work really well with what I have because you know what? This matters to me. And I want to get good at this, either for competitive sport reasons or I want to get better for this for defensive reasons. And usually those two things go right hand in hand. But no matter what your initial motivation is, don't let your confined space be what keeps you from getting better at this. Tell yourself a different and tell yourself a better story that I am going to work with what I've got and I'm going to work really well with it.
I love that, dude. So this brings up another question. So, um, I've had this trouble myself, and I see a lot of folks having this trouble. Suppose we are dry practicing, and it just doesn't translate out into live fire. You know, I'm making times on the timer in dry practice, but when I go out there to the range and I try to get those same times, it doesn't translate over into the same accuracy. And sometimes if I do end up getting that same accuracy, I don't get the same times. So what are we doing wrong here?
Yeah, me too, by the way. Me too. Um, I can put some ridiculous draw times down in dry fire, and then I go out to live fire and it feels slow and it feels clunky and it feels sloppy. And I cannot speak for Memphis. I cannot speak for anybody else other than Samuel Middlebrook. And maybe this will feel familiar and resonate with what's going on in your head and in your heart that becomes what you see and feel in your hands and in your eyes. Here's what it is for me. I'm a different person on the range. I'm less confident on the range. I get a little insecure on the live fire range because now I'm shooting and now all my work that I've done in dry fire is about to get graded by me on the range. And if, like, let's just say a sub-second shot is my goal, and I am able to get down into like the 0.8s in dry fire, and that becomes like a 1.2 in live fire, um, man, did the gun change? Did the holster change? Did the sights change? Did any of the equipment change? Did my height or width change? Did I become a completely different person? No. The gun's exactly the same. If you've ever seen the basketball movie Hoosiers, where the coach takes a team into the big gym at the end and measures the hoop and says, hey, it's 10 feet high, just like at home. Same thing at the range, from dry fire to live fire. Everything is the same. Everything. There's no reason that I should be slower or less accurate in live fire other than dry fire, unless there's something different going on here or going on here. So I have to first realize, and this sucks to realize, but I have to realize that I might be the problem. I have to realize, man, I got something going on in my head or something going on in my heart that is changing what is happening in my hands or what I'm seeing in my eyes. And I've got to process what that is and why. And this is why I do this daily dry fire video thing, because I try really hard to process all of this stuff out loud so that people have an opportunity not to copy, what I'm saying about me, but to hear what I'm saying about me and go, oh, wow, I don't know if I've ever considered that about myself. I didn't know that shooting a gun and dry firing might be a mental and emotional process. Never really thought about that. And I don't want to make this about genders, but I want to call out my dudes out there. We tend to not want to deal with this kind of stuff for a whole lot of reasons. And by the way, almost all of them are ego, which is driven by insecurity. But anyway, we tend to not want to deal with stuff up here or in here. We'd rather just do the thing and do the thing. If I find a huge discrepancy between my dry fire and my live fire, what I have is hardcore proof that I need to work on my mental game and my emotional game when I go to the range and put this all to a test.
Dude, like, seriously, saying the quiet part out loud here. You know what I mean? Like, that's good
Right?
stuff.
Right?
Because no one talks about that. No one talks about like the emotional management that you have to perform.
This is how I teach my classes. and this is also how I do the dry fire channel, or excuse me, the dry fire journal. Um, the what I got tired of, brother, was logging online and seeing dry fire video after dry fire video that was, um, here's 5 easy steps to a sub-second draw, or 2 minutes a day will get you there, or just work this drill. And there's no processing of the drill. There's here's my time. Let me show you my timer. Here's my super cool hits that are like super sexy on the Instagrams, and what a cool person I am. Okay, that doesn't help me get any better. I mean, you know this, Memphis. I could come to where you're at and I could watch you shoot all day and just watch you shoot, not take any notes, not learn anything, not have you tell me anything, and I would get 0% better by watching you shoot. And yet that's what many of the dry fire videos are, or they just prescribe a drill. I wanted to punch through that and say, hey, there's got to be a way for people to access the thought of there's more to dry fire than just the action. There's more to dry fire than just the mechanics. Yes, there are shortcuts to mechanics, but there's so much more to it than that. I've got to deal with the person behind the gun, because the gun doesn't care who's holding it. The gun's going to work the way it works. And I know that I have made the mistake over the years of thinking, well, if I want to get better, I should just get a better holster. If I want to get better at this, I should just get a better gun, or I should just get a new upgraded, whiz bang gizmo that the internet is selling to me. And I try to acquire skill. And the reason why so many people don't advance down the road and see the benefits that happen when you do advance down the road, because by the way, they're pretty cool. But the reason why they don't experience that is, I think, in a reflection of a lot of the material that gets put out there. And so I tried to create something different in my classes and try to create something different in what I'm doing in my video content.
It's definitely different, and I think it has an impact.
Cool.
Yeah, good stuff.
Well, it's funny, man, because the dry fire journal is on my channel. My channel is Redhawk Firearm Training, and the dry fire journal is the only public thing really on it. And man, I'm not kidding. It's like the world's worst YouTube channel. I'm not here to build a following or an audience. I'm here to help a very few amount of people. Let me rephrase that. I want to help a small percentage of people that are actually willing to put in the work to get better. And so I know that this is going to be a small crowd. I mean, at the time that you and I are recording this interview, I currently have more videos on my channel than followers of it. And so it is an acquired taste for some folks, but here's what I can tell you. If you want to be stretched in how you think about dry fire, and if you want to question the way that you have questioned yourself, and I said that phrase intentionally, if you want to question the way that you have questioned yourself in this process, man, come join me every morning. There's a new video every day at like 7 a.m. My time, which is Pacific. And they're usually between 4 and 6 minutes. And we will go through something. You never know what you're going to get, but we'll go through something that I honestly believe is going to help you deep dive beyond just a 5 minute a day, 20 reps a day that never really gets us anywhere. What we're doing on this video is a journey that, like we've been talking about, that explores the person behind the gun and helps me create a better story for myself that absolutely has helped me perform better as a shooter.
Absolutely. If you're listening to this right now, or if you're watching this, I 100% endorse Samuel Middlebrook's Dry Fire Journal. That is much watch, like, stuff that you need to look on YouTube. Absolutely. So I can tell that you're drawing from a deep well of knowledge here. Um, can you tell me a little bit about how you got there, and maybe even touch a little bit about what you used to do before you got into this whole shooting thing?
Oh, sure. Uh, Before I was a firearm instructor, I had two primary career paths. I was a musician, and played a wide variety of instruments and sang and did all kinds of things, largely in the Christian music scene, but also outside of that, did studio work and stuff like that. And I was also a professional Christian, which is what I call it. I was a pastor of Christian churches for uh, 26 years. And that is a uh, that is an interesting background for a firearm instructor. But here's what I've discovered: practice is practice. The discipline of improving at a skill set translates. And I learned to perform at a fairly high level in the music world, and then spent 26 years uh, being a pastor in churches, which means I spent a lot of time dealing with head and heart. And no matter your take on spiritual beliefs and church issues, uh, I invite you just to consider how many years I spent helping people deep dive into their own story, and just look at it from that perspective. So by the time I started teaching firearms, I had well over 10,000 hours of focused professional level practice put into a different discipline, and well over 10,000 hours of time spent into head and heart. And so when it came time to help people learn to shoot more gooder, I had a well of experience to draw from. And I am not surprised at all, nor should anybody else be, that my teaching didn't look like anybody else's. Because I took really good stuff from mentors that helped me along the way, but then said, hey, here's my perspective on this, and this is really different. We're going to need to talk through your head and your heart. But how I got started in the defensive firearm thing was being very slow to realize my need for a defensive firearm. And I'm not going to go into all the detail. I'll give you the quick overview. But in 2004, 2003, my firstborn son was strapped in the back seat in a car seat of my Subaru Outback, and I drove up to the church building where I was working and began interacting with the man on the sidewalk. And he assaulted me and tried to steal my car with my son inside of it. And I had one pervasive thought, which was my son. And that was all I could think of in that moment. And using size and strength, was able to stop that person, and was very fortunate to be able to stop that person because they had a significant advantage. But I left this episode thinking, so far so good. I was able to stop this thing. I was able to protect my son, and so far so good. And so I was a firearm owner, but not a firearm carrier yet, because again, I had this confirmation bias that tilted toward my own success in that one moment, meaning that I would have success in all the moments. And in 2010, I was in Sunnyside, Washington, at a public park. There were a whole bunch of towns that I live in a rural farming area. There are a bunch of towns that get together that do swim meets for kids, elementary and junior high and high school. And you can imagine a sporting event with hundreds of kids and hundreds of parents and lots of movement and chaos and stuff. And this one guy had singled out my son and was throwing a tennis ball back and forth and was basically leveraging that game to draw my son away from the crowd. And I was able to pick up on that and run and stop this guy 20, 30 yards away from the edge of the property, where he had a van with the side panel door wide open, waiting. And when the Sunnyside Police Department came to the scene, one of the arriving officers held up a cell phone with a mugshot of an individual and said, "What can you tell me about this person?" And I said, "That's the guy. And this is a known child sex predator that they've been looking for a while." And had to go to the police station and file reports and do all that stuff. And they were looking for video surveillance and all the things. And as I drove home, I'll never forget this, Memphis. As a father, I hope you'll hear this. As I'm driving home, I remember thinking, okay, so far so good. And almost this weird relaxed feeling of, man, I'm 2 for 2 so far. And the likelihood of any of these events happening to anybody is low. And this is like getting struck by lightning, and I've been struck by lightning twice. And I had this mentality of so far so good. I've used size and determination and presence to stop these 2 horrific things. And 3 years later, I'm at the church that I'm a pastor of, and it's 5 a.m. on a Sunday morning, and I get held up at gunpoint. And 2 guys walk in the building, and the city that I live near is riddled with crime. And for those of you that understand my faith story of being a follower of Jesus, you can appreciate why we put our church in the very center of the very most crime-riddled part of a very crime-riddled city. We did that very intentionally. And tactically, it was a horrible thing. But spiritually, it was actually pretty cool. And relationally, it was fantastic. But we put our church right in the middle of the worst part of one of the worst town in our state. And these 2 guys walk in, and they're looking for cash, and I don't have any because I don't carry cash. And there's a gun out, and I'm looking at the hollow point end of a 9mm round the hard way through the muzzle, because the muzzle's so short I can make out the hollow point. And right up in my face, they shoved it in my ribs, they pushed me to the ground, kicked me a bunch, assaulted me, got me back up, walked me around the entire church building for what felt like 11 years. It was probably 2 minutes. Found my laptop, my secretary's laptop, tucked them under their arms, ran out the door. And because of the way our front door was set up, I couldn't really see it. I was able to give a description of the dudes and kind of a vague description of the car by the time they peeled off. And so the next day, because of how I described it, the detective shows up from Yakima PD. He asked me a question that set my soul on a different course. And I don't mean I walked away from Jesus or church. I just mean it was one of those moments where I felt like something about me as a person changed. And I think all of us can relate with this in terms of just having a moment that changes us. The Yakima police detective comes to my office and he asks me, he says, "Well, Pastor, do you have any..." Sorry, let me kill notifications. Did you hear that?
No, I didn't hear that.
Okay, cool. And I'll leave it the way it was. Sorry about that. I will backtrack. I'll backtrack 30 seconds or so. So the Yakima Police Department detective comes to my office and asks me, basically, pastor guy, do you have any spiritual, moral, ethical reasons that you are opposed to carrying a firearm? And I said, no, absolutely not. And he goes, then why aren't you? And I said, well, so far so good. And he said, what if? Here's the moment. I can tell you what I was wearing, what he was wearing, what time it was. This is so seared into my soul. Here's what he said. He said, what if you're not carrying that gun to save your life? He said, what if you're carrying that gun to save your wife's husband and your children's father? And whoa. Brother, that did it for me. And so I started carrying a firearm. I won't go into detail how, because it was horrible, because I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, horrible. I had no idea, no clue. And had a suboptimal handgun, didn't know any better, and didn't know what I didn't know, and just I had a passion for protection, but no skill to match my passion. And so I put in the time to acquire some skill, and then started teaching. And as I taught, the only way I knew to teach was to teach from my experience. And so now when I teach classes, I teach that love protects. I teach that we are striving to get better at this defensive handgun thing because of love. And I tell people that I believe that love is our biggest motivator. And love is patient and kind and doesn't envy and doesn't boast. It's not rude. It's not self-seeking. It's not easily angered. Doesn't keep a long list of wrongs done to me. That way I'm not bitter. I believe that love trusts. I believe that love hopes. And I believe that love absolutely protects. And it would be entirely unloving of me if I am with my wife and my children. It would be unloving of me if somebody poses a significant physical threat to their well-being or to our well-being, for me to take my wife and push her in front of me and hand her my gun and say, babe, take care of it. That's not about gender roles or any other thing other than I'm the one with the tools. I'm the one with the training. And it is my responsibility, because I love my wife, Shannon. It's my responsibility to keep her safe. It's my responsibility to keep Levi and Max and Maisie and Charlie, those are my 4 kids, to keep them safe. And this is super important. It's also, even when they're not with me, even as I'm driving to and from training classes, it's also important for me to keep Shannon's husband safe, and Levi's dad, and Max's dad, and Maisie's dad, and Charlie's dad safe. And so that is kind of my motivation. And that's really what I'm getting at in everything I do. And my teaching methodology is based on my own experience, just like everybody else's. And I'm trying to help people become better shooters. And I'm trying to help them focus on being good people at the same time. So that's what Redhawk Firearm Training is all about.
That is incredible. Wow, that is incredible. So let's see. So let's leave it with this. If you're not subscribed to Redhawk Firearm Training, if you're not subscribed to Samuel Middlebrook's, Dry Fire Journal, if you're not following his page on Facebook, then you're missing out. You're absolutely missing out. You need to subscribe right now. And I'm going to put a link in the description. Also, if you're in Sam's area and you're not going to his classes, you're missing out. You need to go and visit him as your soonest opportunity. Let's see. Next week, on January 19th, he has the Dry Fire. I think it's a Dry Fire seminar, a Dry Fire webinar.
Dry Fire Solutions is a webinar that's going to be 90 minutes. It's $30 for 90 minutes. And we're going to deep dive into the process that it takes for us to get better at this. And regardless of what training you're doing and what dry fire regimen that you are following or whom you are getting your shooting tips from, this dry fire solution seminar is all about engaging in a process that will help you get further down the road, no matter what type of regimen you are following. So come be a part of it. It's 90 minutes. I think it'll be very, very much worth your time. I'm super giddy, like excited for this seminar, and I hope you come be a part of it.
I hope so too. I'm going to the seminar. I'll be there. And also I'm going to put a link in the description. Um, let's see. Did I leave anything out?
I don't think so.
Excellent.
I think we're in good shape.
Right on. Sam, thanks so much for coming on. I really do appreciate you spending your time with us. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I want to thank you for being who you are. You're one of my inspirations because of the work that you put in and because of the way that you go about it. And you are others focused as you teach. And that's what has attached my heart to yours as a friend and as an instructor. And just the fact that you're willing to bring in different voices from the firearm community and then present them to your tribe, man, that is so cool. And I hope that every one of your viewers and every one of your subscribers and every one of your friends understands the massive well of resource that they have available to them in the form of Memphis. Thanks for being who you are. Thanks for doing what you do. I truly, really appreciate it very much.
Thanks a bunch, Sam. And folks, thanks a bunch for listening. Welcome to Memphis.
Yeah.